many people doesn't believe on Kanaima. But Kanaima is a human being like us, but very skillful. I mean, he have influential things in him.
Yeah.
He could hurt people, kill people.
Good day
Oh,
or
just
night.
don't leave it. Good.
Just good.
Good. They're back.
Or greetings.
And apologies for this being delayed by us not being very well.
Bring out the violins.
Yeah, we didn't have Big Rona. We had
Other issues.
diarrhea. And I still feel ill because you kind of do after you've had an upset stomach, don't you?
Takes a while to recover.
You're not here for that.
They're not. Oh, no. It never does you any good when you start talking about stuff like that.
But I'm just being. But I do talk about stuff like that. It's who I am.
Just part of life, guys.
Yeah, you all
and
do
girls.
it. Get over yourselves. People have been doing it since time immemorial. Right, so part 3 of Monster Hunter Diaries. Where we last left the story, the Monster Hunters and I had reached the township of Letham on the border with Brazil, which, if you remember, was kind of like a Wild West town, not with like a saloon or anything like that. It was just had some buildings and that.
That could be anywhere.
Okay, well, it was like red.
What made it Wild West like?
Well, the sort of big wide roads, the red sand, the wild horses running through the street.
What?
We talked about that in the last video. You need to watch that again.
I did.
You need to watch that again.
I've got great memory.
I remember the night, the last night there. We were told we can go and use the internet cafe, which was basically just this sort of shed that had a huge queue outside because everyone in the town wanted to use the internet cafe. And when I finally got on it, it was so slow that I gave up.
What was the point?
Yeah, what was the point? I just wanted to check my emails, but I hadn't done for.
Oh, so this is
close to 2
before
weeks.
the world of iPhones and stuff?
I think so,
Smartphones.
yeah. Must have been. I mean, we had our satellite phone, which I'd paid for, incidentally.
Never let it be forgotten.
Yeah, it cost me hundreds of pounds just because I thought maybe if, there's an emergency, at least we can call for help.
Did you use it?
I called home once. Richard used it to call John Downs back in Devon.
At least you put it to use then. It wasn't
it was
wasted.
I saw the phone bill when I got back.
What, for the 2 phone calls?
I think there were more than 2 phone calls. I think Richard used it several times. So on top of the 300 quid it cost me to hire.
Oh, God.
Anyway.
Yeah, but imagine if you hadn't used it. The 300 quid would have just been wasted.
Yeah, well, it was more than 300 quid when you added up the phone bill, which was probably another 200 quid on top of it.
Oh, dear.
Anyway, I just wanted not to die. That was my main. That's one of my main things in life. I do want to die one day. I don't want to live forever. Anyway,
No, I don't
That's
either.
by the by. So we were in Letham, and we'd had this night in the internet cafe, and I think the next morning there wasn't.
We had a night in the internet cafe
No.
party.
Oh, yes, thank you.
That's real 90s living.
Yeah.
Let's all go
Well,
to the
it
internet
wasn't a cafe. You couldn't even get coffee in it. Just, cockroaches and things. So the next morning, I don't think there was a plan. I remember it being hot, as it generally was there, but we were all sort of feeling a little bit more refreshed. And we wandered down to the shopping mall, such as it was, which was just basically like a massive sort of stable that had... it was like... That's what it reminded me of, like little kind of... It was like sort of one long channel at the sides of which were sort of shops in kind of...
Was it indoors?
It might have been a stable originally. Yeah, it was.
An indoor mall?
Yeah, it wasn't a mall. When I say mall, it was like literally imagine a horse stable, but in place of horses, there were some people selling trinkets and stuff.
Like an indoor market?
Yeah, okay, market. Yes, that's probably a better word. So I remember really incongruous as well, because it was November, end of November when we went, and they were playing Christmas music in this indoor market / horse stable, but kind of Caribbean reggae versions of Christmas trees. That was weird.
In the heat? In
the heat, yeah. But I think at some point that day, plans got floated to maybe, having heard that there was an airstrip next to the lake where the giant anacondas had been spotted. There was talk of maybe trying to hire a helicopter or something like that to get us there.
That would have been so cool.
By the way, I recently rediscovered that the name of that lake where the giant anacondas were is Corona Pond. So how about that? Yeah, but there's also Corona soft drinks, and I saw a company called Corona the other day. It is a word that exists.
It is an actual word.
It's a coronavirus.
Not all of it is like, oh God, what's the word?
Coincidence.
The coincidence. Yeah, thinking more fortune telling sort of thing.
Yeah.
I can't think of the word. If you can think of the word,
prescient.
Tell us.
Anyway, so
predictive.
I think that was floated, and for some reason that wasn't doable. And I'm pretty sure it was me that said, why don't we just go back to Barbados and have a couple of days there? Because our flight out was leaving from Barbados. We were due to fly in there. This was like, I think, a Thursday or Friday. And we were due to fly out on the Monday or Tuesday. So the plan had been, we were still meant to have been out in the wilds looking for the die and the water tiger and everything else. But of course the trip had been so utterly brutal that that hadn't happened, and we'd ended up back in Letham earlier than planned. So I floated this idea, look, none of us really like the idea of roughing it again for another few days. And somehow staying in a hotel in Letham wasn't, given there was nothing to do there other than try and get on the internet and see the horses. There wasn't a lot of sort of enthusiasm for any of that. So I suggested, why don't we go back to Barbados and we can have a couple of nights in a hotel.
Sounds good to me.
And yeah, much to my surprise, everyone was very keen on this idea.
What a surprise! I wonder why.
Yeah.
They didn't want another.
Well, did I? Hang on now. No, my memory might be letting me down. I don't know if I did suggest that. I tell a lie. What happened was I suggested, why don't we try and see if we can bring our flight forward and go home. That's what I suggested.
Oh, not Barbados.
Well, we were still going home via Barbados, but we had already been there like for a connecting flight. That's what happened. Sorry, and everyone was up for going back early if we could change our flights. So none of us wanted to get the coach back, given that was an 18-hour journey, and none of us enjoyed it particularly.
Understandable.
But there was an airstrip of sorts in Letham. It was just basically a cleared strip of the savannah. So it was just a dust airstrip. And the flight was relatively affordable. So we bought some tickets. It was great. The airport, such as it was like a kind of old 1930s train station where you bought your ticket at a little window, I think.
What?
That's sort of how I remember it. That may be wrong, but certainly when we were sitting there, it was like in the waiting room.
So you just go and buy a plane ticket as and when you want to travel? You don't.
Well, we did then. Yeah, I imagine you can pre-book, but we did then. I remember sitting there. We were chatting to. We got talking to this guy came up to us who was a rubber tapper who...
I'm sorry?
Who was a rubber tapper. You'd tap a tree and make rubber come But he made
job.
But he made with the rubber that he got, he made little statues of things. My mum's still got one. There's a turtle in my mum's house. That was from Guyana.
I need to... Well, that's made out of rubber.
Yeah, rubber tapper made that.
I need to see this. I can't. I would have seen it.
Unless she's thrown it in the bin.
No, she wouldn't do
Like
that.
they wanted to with my school books. So, but as we were chatting to the rubber tapper, I think it was probably Damon who mentioned that he's not just a rubber tapper, he was also a shaman.
Cool.
But not any old shaman, he was a shape-shifting shaman.
I like the sound of that.
I think I asked Damon what can he turn into? And I'm pretty sure Damon said something like, he doesn't do it when people are around, or like he explained or something that, if you see a bush or tree that wasn't there, that might be a shaman who's turned into it, just following you or something. Anyway, but yeah, it was being a shape-shifting shaman didn't make him much money because he had to go and make rubber coming off trees.
Which sounds like magic in itself anyway, doesn't it?
Well, where else does rubber come from?
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And the weirdest thing was his name was Rubber Johnny. It was.
Oh.
But I've started this video very unprofessionally.
Yeah. Start as you mean to go on.
Because my daughter said, when they gone fishing, saw the little man standing up, smiling.
Yeah.
Nice white teeth. Small man with red face. Small man. She's telling her husband, look, somebody smiling.
So we were sitting there, and Damon was talking about how when the airfield, or when they'd cleared the runway strip, they had to knock down a bunch of termite mounds. And having seen one of these termite mounds,
they're huge.
They're really, we're talking up to sort of, 20 foot tall, something like that. But apparently when they demolished them, inside they found human skeletons curled up like that.
No way.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was probably not true.
Oh. Not like it had been like a tomb or something, and then made out of wood or coffin. I don't know. Oh, God.
What?
And then the termites came along and went,
no,
yum, wood.
Somehow the bodies, according to this story, had got into the
termite mound. Not that the termite mound built itself around a tomb.
No.
Or a coffin.
No. Just freestanding termite mounds with supposedly skeletons inside, kind of with
creepy.
like they've been in a sarcophagus.
Right.
But I mean, Damon, if you remember, was the Amerindian chieftain who I'd kind of bonded with over, Coldplay. Sorry. And
don't apologise for
No,
Coldplay.
I wasn't. I was saying Coldplay and Sorry.
Oh.
Which Damon also liked. And Damon had always seemed quite kind of westernised compared to, most of the people we met out there. He lived in Barbados. And he, and then he mentioned this story about the red-faced people, if you remember, when he was out camping, which freaked me the hell out because Damon had not said anything like that. Although he did then go on to say about the bodies in the termite mounds.
Right.
But he sort of said it not in a kind of, for sure, he said, I don't know if it was true.
Right.
But anyway, so the plan was get this plane back to Georgetown, change our flights from Georgetown to Barbados, and then I think we had a morning in Barbados, which we were going to spend with Damon's parents. Mm-hmm. That was the plan. So this plane arrived, which I think I described at the time like a sort of removal lorry with wings. It was not big. It was like a little Bedford van type thing with wings, and we were sharing it with a bunch of parakeets in crates, which wouldn't shut up.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
And as this thing took off, I mean, the CFZ, Centre for Frontier Zoology, have got their own documentary of the trip. Which there is some disparity between their version and my version of events. And one of those disparities is that I was somehow terrified to be on this plane. Right, thank you, Richard, for your voiceover. I was mildly nervous. Mm-hmm. I've not been on a plane that small before. And
full of parakeets.
Full of parakeets. flying, and bear in mind most vehicles we'd got in at that point in Guyana had broken down.
Didn't bode well.
Yeah, it didn't bode well. And on top of that, as it took off, the pilot's chair, which I was sat directly behind the pilot, the back of his chair fell in my lap, and I spent the whole journey having to keep his chair up. So we flew over. I mean, that flight was incredible because it was right over the rainforest.
How long was the flight?
It wasn't that long. I mean,
So this is from Letham to Georgetown.
Letham back to Georgetown. The plan was at Georgetown Airport, try and change the flights.
Right.
And I think, as I was, travelling back, I was feeling a sense of relief. As I think I explained in the other videos, I'd got over my sort of kind of emotional hump, but I had hit a physical hump, and I just missed mod cons by that stage. I just wanted a nice bed, comfy shower, and not to know that I had to get up at 4 a.m. the next day to go on some bloody trek and get eaten alive by things, etc., etc. So I was sort of a bit kind of giddy with excitement because when we landed at Georgetown. Georgetown, not a big airport. When we went through immigration when we first arrived, we queued up outside because the actual immigration hall was not big. Yeah. So we landed back in Georgetown, and we had to. I don't know what the airline was, but for some reason we were a group of how many of us were there? 5, 6. We all looked pretty filthy. Even though we had...
Well, you had been trekking.
Yeah, even though we'd had a night in Letham or maybe 2 nights, I can't remember at that point. And had showers and things. Our clothes that we brought with us were just dirty, unshaven and,
Lots changed since then.
But I remember at the airport, they wouldn't let us in the airport itself in order to try and change our flights. And we've flown back with Damon as well, I think. And and then I think we argued a bit, and they would only let one person in. And I went, I'll do it. Because I was just like, at this point, I was like, no, I'll do it. I'll go and see if we can change our flights. So I went in. Now, originally, I think the way I've told you this story is wrong from what actually happened. What actually happened was we got in there, and they told us how much it would cost to change the flights, which I think was basically rebook a new flight. I didn't care at this point.
You were ready to go. Yeah.
And I thought, and I think they were like, the flight leaves soon. I can't remember. It leaves tomorrow. There was some urgency with it. Either there weren't many seats left, but they were like, you have to pay for this now.
Right.
And I went, sod it, I'm buying my seat. And I went out and told the others, right, I've just booked myself a seat on the plane that goes out tomorrow morning at 6 a.m.
So was that rebooking the whole...
No, that was flying to Barbados. What I then had to do in Barbados was go to Virgin Atlantic's office that they had there, and then move my flight from the Monday or Tuesday forward to when I arrived. That was the plan. Because the Virgin flight only went to New York, which then New York back to London, and still had like this mad like sort of 3-leg flight ahead of us, because no one goes direct to kind of Guyana from the UK. So I'd booked it, and I went out and told the others, and however much I'd paid, they realised that they couldn't afford it or didn't want to pay that much. So suddenly I was I was faced with having to...
This would have saved them how many days? Or saved you all how many days?
A long weekend.
All right.
But I was done. You'd
reached your limit.
And I felt a bit bad that it was pretty clear that I was going to be abandoning them and going back to the UK early. Part of me felt like I'd failed a little bit, but not massively, because I was just so desperate to kind of get back. And then... But the flight was the next day, so really early the next day. So what happened was Damon arranged for the monster hunters to go back and stay in his village.
Is that in Georgetown?
No. It's a couple of hours outside of Georgetown, which is St. Cuthbert's Mission, or God, I can't remember its other name again. Anyway, so Cuthbert's Mission is its kind of Christian name. So they were going to stay there for the weekend. I was going to try to go back to England, but I still had this night before my flight went. So Damon arranged for me to stay with his cousin in Georgetown. Which Georgetown, if you remember way back in the first part of this story, was one of the most dangerous places I've ever been in terms of, sort of the atmosphere.
Right, yeah.
But it's okay, because I was going to be staying with Damon's cousin, who I think was called Marvin. And so we got in a truck. I got dropped off in Georgetown outside Marvin's house. So you went
with Damon, or?
Damon and I think the others.
Right, and how did the others feel about you all kind of splitting up?
They seemed okay. They seemed
because they still had each other.
They still had each other. Yeah, I mean they had. Yeah. You know, I won't jump ahead, but you know, they figured they can do some sort of hunting in that area and look for some monsters. So they continued
their adventure for another few days.
There'd been the die that had snatched a girl, and so you know they figured they could look into that.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Is this all in their documentary, like their 3 days?
Not really. I don't think so. Which is a shame, because I think they went down like the river on a canoe at one point.
Really?
Which I was a little bit jealous of, but also they were sleeping in kind of mud huts,
right?
Which I was less jealous about.
You're like,
or mud huts, or back in the tents, and
right.
Also,
you've reached your limit.
You probably had coconuts every day, which you know how I felt about.
Oh yes.
Remember part 1?
Yes, I do.
So I was going to be staying on. I remember the feeling of seeing them drive away, and feeling sort of oddly alone. You know, but I went into Marvin's house, and his house was. It reminds me of my dad's garage. If you know my dad's garage, kind of built with breeze blocks.
Right.
They had windows, no glass in the windows. It was just shutters. So, and it was effectively just 3 rooms. There was 2 bedrooms. The living area stroke kitchen, and an outside shared communal toilet and shower for the people that lived in this sort of block.
Yes.
Because if you can imagine Georgetown, it was you got the centre of the town. This was sort of on the outside a bit, but it was an area that was clearly very poor, as most of Georgetown is. But Marvin, they had this sort of courtyard out the front, and they had more of these sort of garage-like buildings around the edge of the courtyard, which I think they were sort of stacked a couple of stories high. And then over the back of their house was what was clearly going to be a multi-story housing or living complex that had clearly stood unfinished for years. And also, and this is, I don't say this in any way to sort of look down upon anyone, but it did smell. There was stagnant water running behind the house. And that was the other thing with Georgetown. They had these sort of channels of water running everywhere that clearly just sort of sat, which also, you know, they were effectively sort of mozzie breeding ponds as well. But, I mean, they were incredibly welcoming. Yeah, and they insisted I, you know, have their bedroom, which I was like, no, it's fine. I'll sleep on the sofa or something. But no, we insisted they were going to sleep in with their kids and I was going to sleep in their bedroom. There is more monster stuff to come, by the way. Probably the freakiest bit of all. This isn't all about my night in Georgetown. Although it more or less is. But their house, I always remember it was weird. They had like a Nintendo NES and like a big sort of hi-fi and TV. There was, even though Damon's cousin had come from the same tribe as him, there was sort of, I sort of didn't know whether to kind of go, okay, people are just people, or feel a bit depressed by the fact that they were sort of trying to embrace that kind of consumerist Western lifestyle. Sorry, just checking the time. But anyway, they weren't rich, clearly, you know, as I don't think anyone in Georgetown really is. So when I went into their bedroom, there was the light was operated by a switch in the ceiling. And I turned on the light and pulled the entire light fitting out of the ceiling. And the bulb smashed on the floor.
I can so imagine that happening.
I felt awful. I felt so
It's smashed on the floor as well.
Yeah.
I can so imagine. That's
I mean, it was
brand.
just a single bare bulb, but, you know, I pulled it and it all came out.
Oh, no.
But again, they were really nice. They're very shy, quietly spoken.
They're like, oh no, he's destroyed our house, but we must be polite.
Well, yeah,
our guest.
because this is the other thing that happened. Like, I had a load of, you know, camping crap that I didn't want anymore. You know, it was weighing me down. I just wanted to get back with that with as little baggage as possible. And I think I'd given Damon my tent, and I had some other bits in my rucksack that I thought, oh God, they let me stay with them. I need to give them a gift. So I basically gave them all the camping gear out of my tent, out of my pack, and they were like, oh, okay, thank you.
Do you think they actually wanted it?
I think it
or
put
were they like, what are we meant to do with this?
I think it put them in a difficult situation, because what happened next was I went into the room and then they came in. They obviously felt this was my culture and didn't want to offend me, so they felt they had to give me something. So
no, even though they're already letting you stay in their house, in their bedroom.
Yeah, which was a gift enough.
Yeah.
So having finally offloaded all my gear and felt suddenly 10 times lighter, I was then presented with this 3-story hanging basket. I had to go back to England.
Did you still have it?
No, I gave it to my mum. It's a huge freaking wicker thing that it was really sweet.
But you couldn't refuse.
No, I couldn't refuse. Likewise, I couldn't refuse the glass of orange squash that they gave me with ice in it. And the second I was having it, I thought,
what do you do in that
yeah,
kind of
I
situation?
can't. Would you like a drink? Yes, please. Orange, yes. And yeah, I knew.
And then you see the ice cubes.
Gonna be bad.
And you know what's coming.
It was.
Brown around.
Brown around. This story always comes back to that. So that night, Marvin, if that is his real name, or his name, who was a cab driver, as I found out, asked me if I wanted to come with him to work. I mean, you know, they possibly didn't want to leave me alone in the house, a stranger with his wife and child, which is perfectly understandable. So I said, yeah. And the way cabs work in Georgetown, I don't know if it's the same anywhere else in sort of South America or anywhere. But it's basically, he's got this big minibus thing. And he seemed to just drive around and flag people down, and then gradually this minibus would get filled up with people.
Well, there's a video on YouTube actually of a guy who's visiting Georgetown, and he rides around in one of these cabs.
Yeah, as did I. And it was good because I kind of got a tour of Georgetown as well from the safety of his cab. At least at first.
And you get to meet some locals.
I didn't get to meet anyone else.
Oh, no one used the cab?
Yeah, loads of people used the cab, but, you know, no one else spoke to me.
Oh, okay.
They probably thought, why is
who's this guy?
Yeah, what's this white guy sat in the front of Marvin's cab? And, I mean, you know, Marvin gave me a bit of a tour. He sort of showed me some of the areas that, you know, he said, well, sort of, you don't go to after night. But there was still a pride about where he was from. He still took a certain pride in it. But the most intense moment, shall we say, there is a market in central Georgetown, which I think overlooking the market is a church, which is like the tallest building in Georgetown. It's not that tall, but he drove me into this market, and it was like a riot van going into a riot, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that, because it felt like hundreds of people were all trying to get into Marvin's minibus at the same time
as he drove through.
It didn't feel like that. That was literally what happened. The second the door was open, this thing was swarmed by people, all trying to get into Marvin's minibus. I mean, he didn't bat an eyelid. I was sitting there thinking, Jesus.
Oh, I was going to say, what did he do?
Christ.
Does he just let them all in?
Well, this was just what happened to him. It's what he did every night.
Do they argue with each other and say, no, it's full, get out?
No, yes, that was literally what was happening. There were people being pulled out by other people who got in. It was seriously full on. And he's just sat there. I mean, really chill guy.
He's used to it.
He was used to it. So we drove around for a while, and then he asked me if I was hungry, having already eaten once at his house. But we went and picked up his wife, and we went to go and get some fish and chips.
Oh, really?
Of all things. Now, Guyanese fish and chips is not like our fish and chips. It was possibly the best fish and chips I've ever had. The chips were plantains.
Oh, I love plantain chips.
Yeah. But
I haven't had those in ages, actually.
We were...
So what, like, wow. And is it served sort of the same way? Battered fish?
Battered fish.
But the chips are plantain chips?
Yeah, and the batter was slightly spicy. But the street that the fish and chip shop was on the corner of, on the opposite side, I don't know if it was another fish and chip shop or it was a bar or something. But anyway, the fish and chip shop seemed to just serve the indigenous Amerindian community, blasting out music. And the other side of the street seemed to just serve the black community. And this was like Friday night. There was a lot of public drinking going on. Oh,
and you said in the first video there's a bit of...
I heard this a lot
Georgetown.
from Damon. And there's me stood there in the middle of it, the one white guy in Georgetown, quite aware that both sides of the street are staring at each other. And, I felt really conspicuous. Particularly as I was still dressed in my, adventuring gear.
Right.
But I thought, well, this is a good time. I'm writing a book. This is a good time to sort of ask Marvin about some of the creatures that we'd gone there to find. So I asked about the giant anaconda.
Sorry, it's just like a tiny detail, but I'm curious. So did you eat inside?
No, we stood outside eating the fish and chips.
So you just stood eating?
Yeah, I
didn't go back to the van or anything?
No, stood outside eating the fish and chips on the corner with Marvin and his wife. So I asked him about the anaconda, and he sort of rolls his eyes, and I asked him about the water tiger, and he goes, Pfft.
Oh, he's another non-believer.
Yeah. And as I say, very westernised. They had a Nintendo and CDs and watching game shows and stuff. And I asked her about the die, and he went, it's not real. And I said, I was like, yeah, right, yeah, God, as if it would be, right? And he's like, yeah. And then I said, and then there's those red-faced people. And he went, oh no, they're real. I was like, whoa.
So far, everyone you've met has confirmed
the little red-faced people. But that was probably, for me, the spookiest moment of the entire trip, because Marvin was, I hesitate to say this, only because I don't want to offend my monster hunting mates, but Marvin was sort of normal, but so was Damon. Okay.
And they both confirmed the existence of red-faced people.
Yeah, from their point of view.
Had he ever seen a red-faced person himself?
I don't know if I even asked, because I was so flabbergasted that the way he said it in such a matter-of-fact way. Oh, no, they're real. I don't even know if I asked a follow-up question. I was just like, my jaw was sort of, dragging along the ground by this point. So what happened next was we went back to Marvin's house, and I had to get up at, I think I had to get up something ridiculous like 2 a.m. to get to the airport a flight at 4 or something, or it was an hour drive to the airport. I don't know, but there was quite a long drive to the airport the next day, which Marvin insisted on taking me to, which was very nice of him, and I insisted he shouldn't, but he clearly the nicest man ever. But that night, I just did not sleep. I went in the room, and the second I went in there, something ran under the bed.
What do you mean, something?
Exactly. What do I mean something? I didn't see.
How many legs?
Well, I didn't see. I saw a shadow run under the bed.
How big was the shadow?
It was sizable. Could have been a toad or frog. Could have been a rat. Could have been a big.
Did it
spider.
scurry or hop or
It
slither?
was out of the corner of my eye.
Oh.
But it was sufficiently big that I heard it under there all night.
What was it doing?
Moving
Hang
around.
on, Tully wants to come in.
He has to be centre of attention, doesn't he?
He's going to make noise until he does come in.
Go on.
I mean, he'll want to leave again.
Yeah, he'll want to leave in minutes. What a dick.
He's upstairs.
Oh, why?
He's cute. He's not a dick. He's lovely.
You don't always say that.
When he annoys me in the morning. But...
So, yeah, this shape ran under the bed and it kind of kept me awake all night. And the
what
other
was it
worst
doing
thing,
under there?
the other worst thing was because I was under a mozzie net, was I'd drift off or close my eyes for a while and then I'd wake up and there'd be some other giant thing on the mosquito net. The biggest.
No thanks, like moths and stuff.
Yeah,
or
yeah.
just mozzies.
No, bigger things. I remember there was like a dragonfly that was like the size of my hand or like that.
Wow.
Like,
oh
on
no,
the
I love
net.
dragonflies.
You don't really.
Dragonfly at night? Really?
It was awful.
I love dragonflies, moths, no
I mean,
thank
I
you.
was-
Especially giant moths, tiny moths, okay,
I was
giant
surrounded
moths, no
by them.
way.
Like it was like covering the entire net. It was awful
You
because
don't
the
have any
window.
photos, do you?
No. Yeah, I mean this is
Just curious what
pre-smartphone, so
the...
didn't really.
yeah, I suppose.
But the because the windows were open. You know,
Right.
there was no glass, and you couldn't even really shut the shutters because it was too hot. Yeah, that was it. There was no air in there, and it smelled from outside. And I'd broken the light. And,
Oh,
you know.
no.
Anyway, but the next morning, got up early. I went and had a shower in the communal shower because I felt so sticky. And Marvin gave me the lift to the airport. And I was starting to feel, great, this is it. I'm going home. I'm going back to, comfy bed and, normal food. Cool weather, yeah, which it was going to be cool because it was November. And I landed in Barbados and told the cab driver to take me straight to the Virgin Atlantic office. And the Virgin Atlantic office was tiny. It was weird. It wasn't like in the centre of town or anything. And it just like I had one guy behind the desk. And I said, is there any chance of bear in mind, by the way, at this point, I was still filthy,
Covered in red dust. And...
Yeah. And I said to the guy, I need to change my flight from next week to today, please. And he said, you can't, there aren't any flights till Tuesday or whatever it was. So
no.
I was stuck in
hang on.
Barbados.
What a shame, being stuck in Barbados for a few days.
Yeah, I was stuck in Barbados for the weekend, which was cool. I mean, I had to...
Yeah, I wouldn't complain.
Cool, but expensive. I had to pay for a hotel, and the first hotel turned me away because of what I looked like.
Oh, no.
Genuinely. The second hotel did let me in, and I mean, it was amazing. I had like this view out over the beach and went and had my breakfast on the pier, and I went in a submarine. That was cool. And then on the morning that...
Better than hanging out in a tent in the savannah in the heat with red dust everywhere.
Infinitely so. Oh, I did have, of course...
What's that? That's not my phone.
Oh, don't worry about
No,
it.
mine's on silent.
And of course, I did, although by this point, have diarrhea because of the ice that I'd eaten back in Georgetown, but it didn't matter. I mean, I had to go and buy some clothes. Bought a red stripe t-shirt because that was the local beer. And just had a few days just not doing a lot, really. The cab drivers there, it's so dirt cheap. They'll give you a tour of the island for next to nothing, and
Personal tour.
Yeah. But the Monday I knew they were coming back, the other guys.
Right. Were you in
flight.
contact with
No,
them at all
there's
during
no
this
contact.
time?
No contact. So I waited at the airport for them. I got a cab to the airport that morning. And there was a guy there I was pretty sure was Damon's dad because he looked like Damon.
Right.
I didn't speak to him until the others
Oh,
turned
he
up.
was also waiting for them, but separate to
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
And then the guys all came out of the airport, and it was weird. I was really, really happy to see them, to see all of them. Yeah, I'd kind of weirdly, in the sort of 3-4 days that I'd had without them in Barbados, sort of missed them. And it was nice to sort of just see other people again, or that I knew.
Your travel buddies. And I suppose as well, there's some kind of bonding that occurs when you go through such a unique experience.
Yeah.
Or ordeal and
And
stuff.
yeah, I remember Richard coming out, Biffo's here. Because they all thought I'd gone back to England.
Oh, really? They didn't know you were going to be in Barbados?
No, well, we hadn't had any contact. My plan was to go to Barbados, get the flight out
Oh,
that day.
of course. They didn't know that.
No,
Virgin had said there aren't any flights.
Yeah, they had no idea.
Ah.
So we were reunited. We spent the day I spent the day with them in Barbados. We went around the island and we had lunch at Damon's parents' house. They were very lovely. Had some strange animals in their garden.
What kind of animals?
Well, they had a cage full of mollusks. These big kind of crabby, kind of hermit crab type things in their garden.
Oh.
They're giant.
How big? How big is giant? Each one?
Yeah,
Was that
big red things.
Were they walking
Shell,
around?
yeah.
In water? Near
No,
water?
just in a cage.
Oh.
Right? They had,
That's a unique pet.
they had tortoises in their garden as well.
Oh my god, I love tortoises. Big ones, little ones.
Big ones, I think.
That's so cool.
So that was really the kind of the end of the trip. That we then, it was a case of sort of then get the flight back to New York from Barbados at the end of that day, and then back to England, and it was over. And the guys, I think they put their documentary together. I wrote some words for a book. I wish there was a kind of bigger sort of conclusion that or climax that I come to, but really it sort of ended with that.
So I'm assuming
moment.
the trip back was uneventful.
Yeah.
3-leg journey, and then when you got
Oh
back...
no! Bloody hell! The 3-hour drive back from Gatwick with the freaking
3 hours. Oh, the bee drive.
Yeah, the bee maniac. My God, 3 hours back from Gatwick Airport, stuck in traffic with a guy who was obsessed with bees. Because we all kind of went our separate ways. I was with this cab driver who, oh Jesus, he didn't shut up the entire journey. I mean, it was interesting at first.
Beekeepers are passionate about
They are.
their...
I hadn't slept for.
What would you call
Back then,
it?
I didn't sleep on
Interest.
planes. I was very, very tired, and he was telling me, and you see them flying around their hives. Do you know what they're doing? They're protecting it. And
That's
they're
interesting.
protecting it from wasps. He hated wasps.
I would have loved
he
that
hated
journey.
wasps.
So you hate wasps, so you've
Well,
got
yeah,
bonding.
who doesn't? Don't complain about that, animal rights people. Yes, wasps serve an important ecological function too. Yeah, but he hated wasps, loved bees, didn't shut up about them. To me, the very jet lagged, very tired passenger. So that's the end of the story.
Right.
I
just want to ask one thing. When you got back to England, was it really surreal coming to a country that was so different to Guyana, where you'd been for 2 weeks?
don't really remember getting back, to be honest. Not massively. It was weird. I was pleased to be back, but it was it was brutal. Richard and the others, and they'd done some crazy trips, did say it was the toughest trip they'd ever been on just because of the heat. There was one point where we were walking back from Taushida and we sat under a bunch of rocks, and while we sat there, a flock of vultures started circling over our heads like in a cartoon. I'm not kidding. Literally vultures circling us.
That's ominous.
Right? Yeah, and that kind of summed up the trip in a lot of ways.
So what was the thing that stood out to you the most when you got back to England?
Well, apart from the insane heat and the physical debilitation, it was it was the thing that has stuck with me all these years was Marvin's "No, they're real."
Really?
Because it freaked me out.
And do you have any kind of is there a part of you that wants to go back and see if you can
Well, the Monster Hunters did talk
find
about
out some more about these red-faced people?
They did talk about going back in a cooler sort of time, but they never did.
But we watched some videos on YouTube, sort of videos of people exploring Georgetown, and you said it's changed quite a lot.
Not Georgetown, not particularly. No, Letham had changed. Letham was more.
But Georgetown also had bits that had built up a bit more. And...
Yeah, I mean, it's been 13 years, so yeah, it's inevitable. Yeah, there has been investment in infrastructure in Guyana. You know, there are new roads in places there weren't before. There's a new connecting bridge to Brazil, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, the journey through the rainforest is still the same.
It would still, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's still.
So you're just like, no thanks, I've done it once.
Yeah, but I'm very glad I did it, and I'm glad to have had that experience and to have spent time with, you know, Richard, Lisa, Chris, and Oren, because they're all so different from one another and so different from me. Yeah, as is John Downs, who runs the CFZ. But all of them, you know, I've seen them since, and there's always a moment of, God, I'm really pleased to see you. Mm-hmm.
Like old friends.
Yeah, because we did really share something that was, you know, even though, as I've said before in these videos, it wasn't like I sort of trekked single-handedly across the Antarctic. Yeah, I know really it was nothing more than a brutal holiday.
But it's a big jump from your day-to-day life.
Yeah, and it was so far removed from my day-to-day life in terms of what we were doing. That you know, it stayed with me, and
would you say it changed you in any way?
I think it proved to me that I had limits that were my limits were higher in terms of what I could do. You know, if I set my mind to a thing.
Oh,
yeah, physically,
okay.
Certainly, I knew it. I never thought I could have done that. And, yeah, I was younger then, obviously, but even then, you know, I wasn't Mr. Fitness, but I still got through it. But part of the reason I got through it is because of the kindness that they showed me at the point when I wanted to throw in the towel. Mm-hmm. You know, that's what got me through. Because even though they are all, and I mean this in the nicest possible way, nuts.
So are you.
So am I. You know, but they were really sweet to me. And that moment, one of the other big moments, is when I was waiting at the airport for them, and they were pleased to see me. So yeah, you know, would I do it again? Don't know. Probably not. Not with my knees. You know, remember going up Ivanhoe Beacon Deer?
Oh, I'll never forget that.
So yeah.
Do you think? Would you say the trip affected you more emotionally, mentally, or physically?
Physically, I think.
Because you said you've realised that your limits are bigger. No, your limit.
Yeah, I couldn't think of the right way to say it either. Yeah, I can push myself further.
You can go further than you thought. So, yeah. Would you say that was more physically, or emotionally, or mentally?
Physically. Oh yeah, I've been through worse emotionally. But physically, yeah. You know, I've never been the most.
And the impact of the trip was affected you more physically than emotionally or mentally.
Yeah, not emotionally, but certainly it opened my eyes to a part of the world that you don't hear a lot about. You know, when South America's mentioned, Guyana doesn't generally get a look in. And
they've got elections this year, don't they?
Guyana?
Yeah, don't they?
I don't know.
Well, you had a comment on the YouTube
channel. Oh, yeah. Okay. All right, let's not get into that.
I don't know any other information about it.
Yeah, it opened my eyes to a part of the world that no one ever really talks about. And it just, and it also, not only that, but I saw things that, you know, you don't see on postcards or on travel documentaries. And yet they're stunning. Amazing sort of, you know, landscapes that no one visits. You know, things like Teabag Stone, and you know, and then there's the sort of folklore out there, which, you know, the monster stuff, there's probably a basis of, you know, reality in it. And, you know, as the monster hunters themselves sort of say, they're not looking for monsters. That's the media friendly version of what they do. They're looking for undiscovered animals, or animals that were believed to be extinct. Yeah, I mean, yeah, not so sure about the water tiger, but, you know, they did think it was possibly like a big otter.
Okay, so just like another type of otter.
Yeah.
So, at the end of this journey and trip, where do you stand on the existence of the Dai?
It's a monkey.
The water tiger?
Don't exist.
Nothing.
Might be an otter.
Not even another type of
Might
otter.
be an otter, and I'm sorry to CSF for all of this.
And what about the red-faced people?
Don't know.
Oh, what about the giant anaconda?
Yeah, it's big snakes. We know that.
Yeah, the giant snake.
100 feet now.
But the red-faced people?
Don't know. That's the one that freaked me out. And I'm not, you know, a believer, but don't know. Jury's out on them. So there you go. Do. Thank you for watching this. I know it's been an epic journey for you, more than me, perhaps. Having to get through these. But I've enjoyed them. I think the next one I'm going to do, it won't be the next video, but the next journey is
Travels
with Biffo is probably talking about a time I went to Chernobyl with my dad.
That's another cool story.
It's a cool story. My advice, don't go to Chernobyl with your dad. Bye everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for watching. Be safe. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe.